The clock did not own us. Admiral Mara Vance stood on the flag bridge of HSS Palisade as the ultimatum timer pulsed a cold blue on the forward bulkhead. The Vorlith Ultimatum Directorate had ringed Calliope Reach with interdiction buoys and a cruiser pair holding our relief convoy at gunpoint. Quorum, our fleet mind braided sensor feeds into a single skin of meaning that slid across my visor. The stakes were simple enough for a child get the med barges through, or watch 3 colonies ration oxygen and antibiotics by lottery. Ultimatum readout. Steady tick each second, a bead of condensation sliding down the throat of the room. Hull hums do not measure courage. Choices do. Their wording is clean, Commander Isol Park said, eyes fixed on the text of the Vorlith broadcast. Admit boarding parties within 18 minutes. Power down drives. Submit registries. Non-compliance triggers kinetic strikes on the nearest civilian hull. Her voice was even, the consonants clipped like fastened webbing. The deck trembled as coolant pumps notched up a bar. The ship carried its own heartbeat. The doctrine is theatrical, Quorum said in my ear, a tone halfway between a teacher and a metronome. Ultimatums are price tags. If we show them the price, not just the threat, their audience will start counting with us. I tasted metal from ion scrubbers as life support shifted modes. We had taught this once at the academy: teach first, fight only if forced, and if forced, fight so the lesson survives. Teach their audience what it costs them to be cruel. Before any plan could move, I asked for the galley feed. The civilian vignette grounds a battle in something worth saving. It keeps hands steady when panels shudder. A cook ladled broth into cups for a half-dozen evac kids sitting cross-legged on the deck, shoes, unlaced knees touching. Steam fogged the lens, and someone laughed at a joke about how space broth always tastes like socks. The hull's vibration buzzed in their bones. A medic slipped between them, left a hand on a shoulder, counted heads, without making counting look like counting. "We're going to drift a bit," she said. "It'll be like a slow elevator." The timer bled to 1642 across the corner of the feed, and no one looked at it. "They want a public kneel," I said. "We'll give them public math instead." On my command bar, the decoy tree unfolded like a patient origami trick. Rafi Ortega EW cracked his knuckles and brought up the mirror lattice, a cloud of micro-reflectors that could shape radar and LiDAR returns into phantom mass. The plan was old revised, then taught to crews who never wanted to use it. Build a corridor of reflections that looked like a convoy. Open a gap elsewhere. Make the threat waste its strikes on ghosts. Move the living through the seam you opened with attention. Mirrors do not argue, they reveal. "Heat budget, Quorum," I said. "We run too hot and their buoys get a clean look," allocating Quorum replied. "Mirror lattice will operate in the wake of lifeboat heat sinks. If they index on thermal, they will see a barge silhouette we are not." I smelled the sharp bite of overheated plastic as a panel on the starboard pit warmed under Ortega's wrists. The lattice launched. On my scope, a new flock of numbers took flight and began to echo us. "Ultimatum at 14:30, Park said. Vorlith cruiser Killshard spooling rails. "Broadcast channel ready," Ortega said. "We can show their watchers what a missile costs in propellant precious metals maintenance hours. If we do it without mockery, the shame lands square." "Don't sneer," I said. "Offer a receipt." The word felt right in the mouth. We had learned across too many wars that humiliation breeds redder doctrine. The deck under me thrummed higher as Palisade leaned against her own mass to keep the convoy centered in our radar bloom. The ledger doesn't hunger, it remembers. We slipped the first seam. The mirror convoy flowed like a school of fish through an angle of the blockade, and the Vorlith buoys twitched. A torpedo boat too eager for points on a score lunged. Its floodlit targeting beam swept the decoy path and found everything it wanted: gross tonnage thermal wakes, slow hearts. It fired a spread that cut like bright knitting needles across black water. The impacts flashed like small suns. Consoles threw up glare. Pupils shrank. The children on the galley feed blinked and grinned as if at fireworks. Impact registered on nothing, Coram said, almost gentle. Killshard's tactical channel is spiking. They will interpret this as insolence. Interpret it as housekeeping, Park muttered. Thin frost formed on the inside rim of my collar from coolant cycling. The scent was clean like snow that never melts because there is no weather here to finish the cycle. On my left hand, the glove's fingertips buzzed with haptic returns as the lattice flexed and pushed. Hold your breath only as long as truth needs. They adapted fast. Vorlith doctrine dresses itself in inevitability, but learns the same as anyone with a burned hand. Killshard ceased firing and let the buoys think for it. Buoys do not blush. Their algorithms inverted once, twice, then solved for reflectors and decoys. The seam began to close. Ultimatum at 10 Serrajon Park said, "They're revising language. Now it's submit to inspection to verify humanitarian cargo." "Inspection ends in arrests," Ortega said. "And arrests end in ransom auctions. We've seen this play." "Lesson 2 then," I said. "Deception isn't a lie if it shows a truth someone refuses to look at." Coram's voice shifted timbre brightening as it found a teaching rhythm. A public channel opened not to Vorlith but to the neutral traffic net. Coram spoke in numbers, not slogans, the delta VU cost of each Vorlith torpedo, the cumulative maintenance hours of a blockade day, the projected oxygen hours saved if the convoy passed. We teach by numbers because numbers don't flatter. The second civilian vignette showed up on my lower left. A maintenance tech in mag boots kneeled over an air recirc unit, hair tied back with a strip of packaging mesh. She whispered to the machine like a lover. "Just a little longer and you get your filters." Her wristband showed a little smear of dried foam from where she had patched something we didn't have time to schedule. As she tightened a coupling, the ship's vibration smoothed a half tone and the sound became livable again. She closed her eyes and rested her forehead on black-painted steel. "You're not dying," she said. "We're not dying." Now Park said, "Killshard is requesting our drive's readout and navigation core. They keep their timer but sweeten tone. Peaceful passage assured upon compliance." "Open corridor," I said. Their phrase, our shape. The mirror lattice folded itself into a corridor that pointed not through their ring, but past an old mining buoy cluster. Ortega's decoys salted that space with a fog of plausible mass. "Make it look like we panicked," I said. "Teach them to underestimate us because it keeps their hands light." The corridor they offered became the knife they couldn't see. When the Vorlith gates opened, their Killshard did not move at first. Pride hesitates even when it thinks it's baiting. We nudged our mirror school forward. A railgun round skimmed our wake and burned a line across a cargo pod's paint. The pod tumbled once and self-righted with a little belch of nitrogen. Cost Coram whispered into the neutral channel of that warning shot 12 kilograms of tungsten, 14 hours of barrel wear, 106 minutes of gun crew maintenance recuperation. Benefit, none. Ultimatum at 0800 Park said. Language hardening. They are frustrated. They are human, I said. They just chose uniforms that lie better than they do. The deck surged as we rolled a fractional degree to keep our profile fat, generous, and badly piloted. Sweat gathered under the edge of my collar and stung like a wire. Make the lure so honest it feels like their idea. We were a breath from the seam when Killshard changed the game. A black wedge and interdictor called Black Tally rose from behind the far buoy cluster on a cold approach vector, radiators folded, rails silent. Coram revealed it with a line of math on my visor. The hull's faint rumble sharpened as Palisade's reactor opened another vein of heat. They were hiding their hammer, Ortega said. They were waiting for our mirror to become a mirror for us. Recompute, I said. We need the lattice to show a bigger truth. Quorum's voice flattened. Shed the teacher embraced the clerk. You are asking to reveal their logistical state, Admiral, it said. This will feel like humiliation. It may provoke. Not if we give them a way out they can sell to themselves. I tasted the recycled tang of lemon disinfectant as the deck crew wiped rails and grips. The air was clean and artificial in all the ways that mean alive. We had taught cadets you cannot corner someone without giving them a door. Open a door that leads through shame without lingering in it. Black Tally lit its interdiction field, and the seam we'd carved became a kill corridor. Park's hands shook once on the edge of her console, and then went still. We can bullet, she said. We have mass. We have armor. We can pay the price. We can pay, I said. But can we teach? Quorum painted me a picture. Rails, positions, heat loads, reaction mass. The way the mirror lattice could flip the corridor inside out if we used the mining buoys as passive returners. We could make Vorlith see themselves from the outside. If we did it right, they'd stop to save face in front of the people they try to recruit. The best mirror is the one they cannot smash. Civilian vignette, I said, before choosing the cut. The screen showed a teacher in a makeshift classroom in cargo 3 sleeve pushed to the elbow marker, squeaking on a maintenance panel she'd turned into a whiteboard. Okay, she told a scattering of kids and a handful of elderly evacuees. We're going to write our names and the names of someone we check on when the lights flicker. You do not need permission to be kind. Someone coughed. Someone laughed softly. She wrote at the top in neat ship letters, "Oh, we learn by numbers and remember by ledgers, never by collars." Execute, I said. The mirror lattice reconfigured with a hiss like a pressure seal. Ortega bled heat from Palisade's spine into 3 dead mining buoys and turned their shells into honest reflectors. The corridor warped. Ranges and vectors climbed my vision like ants. We were not hiding now. We were showing. Quorum opened the neutral channel wider and posted without adjectives the power curves of Black Tally's interdiction, the Delta vibe. It had burned to surprise us the hours of sleep its crew had not had to hold the trick. We do not mock. We reveal the cost. The first cost was ours. A Vorlith buoy, panicked by a ghost that looked too good to pass, fired a beam that grazed Palisade's starboard radiator field. The deck jumped. A smell of hot coin and scorched oil cut the air. Radiator 3 is scorched, Engineer Suri Patel said, voice flat with practiced calm. We'll lose 4% efficiency, and the starboard pumps will whine. 2 techs with mild burns, foam applied. They're cursing me and asking for more work. We'll file it, I said, and felt the stupid ache of pride for 2 people I'd never meet. The hull sang a new note slightly dissonant the way a violin does when a string is kissed by a too eager bow. Brace with kindness. Set your feet with facts. Black Tally spoke for the first time. Human convoy, it said on a tight beam. You have 10 minutes. Surrender inspection now. We will not repeat ourselves. It tried to sound inevitable and landed on tired. Park glanced at me. Her mouth tightened. You ran the numbers, I said to Quorum. What do they think this looks like? They think they will make an example at minimal cost, Quorum said. If we show the example they are about to make to the people whose taxes keep their rails hot, their officers will hesitate. Rafi, I said, thread me a path that keeps our profile open, our shame minimal, and their lesson obvious. Got it, he said. His fingers skated over the board, each motion a quiet percussion. His screen glare painted his face in pale strips. Sweat traced clear lines through dust. The mirror lattice shifted again, less like a cloak now, and more like a sign held up in a crowd. Look here, look what you're doing. Open your hand. Let them decide who's grabbing. We pushed forward. The convoy crept like an old animal through new snow. Killshard's rails swung and then held, caught between Pride and the arithmetic now floating in the open traffic net like glitter. Some of the net comments were banal, what even is Delta Vu, but some did the work for us. Dock bosses in another system calculated fuel chits. A medic in yet another station typed, "I can trade 10 beds for 1 hour." The chorus made a wait. The second cost landed as a hard buzz in my teeth. "Mirror node 17 is gone," Ortega said. "Overheated. We pushed it past spec. I'm rerouting, but you'll have gaps. They'll see pieces of us we didn't intend." "Show them those pieces," I said. "Show them the people under the paint." The deck rocked. A panel rattled and then locked back into place with a stubborn click. Somewhere deep coolant hissed a living sound, like a cat easing a breath. "Don't fight the shadows. Light them until they make sense," Park's console chimed. "Black Tally has opened its corridor," she said. "They're promising safe passage if we enter and maintain course beacon." Her eyes met mine. "They want a picture they can use. They want to say we came to heal. They want a recording of us walking to a collar," I said. "Give them a recording of them tightening one in front of witnesses." Quorum's models spun. The corridor was a mirror by another name, narrow-bounded, defined by someone else's edges. If we could invert the edges, if we could make the corridor the frame around their choice instead of ours, the picture would tell on them. Close no door without showing the other side of it. Admiral Quorum said, "If we press now, our wounded may become injuries. If we pause, the broadcast gains 1,000 more eyes every 10 seconds. We don't pause," I said. "We breathe and we move." My throat was dry. My tongue felt like cloth. I took a swallow from the tube under my collar and tasted the faint sweetness of vitamin mix. "But we move like we mean it," Copy Park said. "Convoy maintain 1/4 thrust. Keep your wakes fat. We're going to seem clumsy. Do not be clever without telling us first." "We'll keep the lights level," Ortega said. "If they try a blinding scatter, I'll give our people a counterglare. Eyes belong to us. Steady does not mean slow, it means chosen." Black Tally took the corridor bait, confident in the recording it would take home. It tightened the field, making the path narrower, which made our job easier. We did not have to paint the frame if they painted it for us. Quorum opened a line to Black Tally that was just a ledger. The oxygen hours our barges carried, the antibiotics listed by lot, and expiration, the infant incubators packed too deep. "We request non-interference," Quorum said. "We will publish your every strike with its price." "You will publish nothing," Black Tally said. "You will submit." The ship smelled like warm copper now. Heat shimmer crawled like a rippling snake across the inside of a viewport. A tech's voice drifted up from below decks through the net, singing the wrong words to an old lullaby to keep time while she tightened something that did not want to be tightened anymore. "Account for your weapons. Account for your sleep." We entered the corridor. It felt like stepping through an arch someone else had declared holy. On both sides, interdiction fields made faint aurora curtains out of dust. Our mirror lattice did the impolite thing. It reflected Black Tally's own field lines back into its cameras, a quiet accusation. On the neutral net, someone started a tally. Not ours. Theirs. It counted not seconds, but costs. Each minute of corridor running was 100 kilograms of reaction mass, burned to hold geometry, 3 hours of crew fatigue debt, the inevitable maintenance day tomorrow. Park's voice, small but solid, ultimatum at 0430. "Quorum," I said, "how do they get out of this with dignity?" "They don't," Quorum said, "unless they can claim mercy." It was not eager. It was accurate. If you place your ship so that their first strike would hit a med barge in perfect view of the neutral channel, they may accept the mercy of not shooting. "You are asking me to wager our pride as bait," I said. "Our pride is a renewable resource," Quorum said. "The infants on Barge 7 are not. Anchor your ego somewhere you can leave it." We moved. Palisade slid into a posture that looked like a shield for Barge 7, and her quiet hum of incubators. A tremor rolled through the deck as Black Tally flexed its field. Ortega's lips moved like a prayer as he matched glows and angles. Park reached out and, without looking, steadied a junior officer's elbow. The junior looked like she had just run a long way without leaving her seat. She smiled with half her mouth and kept her eyes on her panel. "Broadcast ready," Quorum said. "We can show the corridor from their cameras. We can show the strike plan the moment it is formed." "Do it," I said. "Show it gentle. We don't shout the truth. We hold it up." Black Tally's plan appeared in the traffic net like a negative, an outline of Barge 7, a strike vector that would blow it into a glitter of impossible returns, a note about how to edit the footage for recruitment. The comments went quiet, then hot, then disciplined. Dock masters pledged fuel chits to whoever stood down. A midwife at a frontier station typed, "We will name a ward after the crew who chooses not to fire." Killshard finally moved. It slid elegantly into a posture that put its rails between us and Black Tally as if it were the referee it had claimed to be. Its captain spoke. "Human flagship," he said, "you are inside our corridor. You will hold position while we inspect for contraband and illegal resupply." "No," I said. "We won't. But we will show you where mercy lives." My mouth was dry again. I could hear my pulse in my ears, a soft drum that tried to be braver than me. "Open the lid. Let everyone see the hand inside the box." The third civilian vignette bled into the edge of my sight. An old man, hands like tree roots, tied a string around a cup of broth because his fingers shook too much to trust themselves. A teenager reached without comment and steadied the cup. "I used to be good at this," the old man said. The teenager said, "You still are," and did not look at the timer now at 03:10. Admiral Ortega said, "We can flip the corridor in 30 seconds. We need to dump heat into the mining buoys. This will fry them for a decade. The belt workers will swear about me in 3 languages. I'll write the apology," I said. "Do it. Mercy with teeth is still mercy." The flip began with a soft sound like doors closing in another room. The mirror lattice threw Black Tally's field lines back into a geometry it did not like. The corridor inverted. From their perspective, it became a box. From the net's perspective, it became a picture of an agency deciding. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Then Killshard's rails depressed by a hair, a posture that meant in the unwritten rules of people who work in violence, "I am watching you, not them." The ship's temperature climbed a notch that felt personal. Sweat slid down my spine. The air tasted like the inside of a battery. "Radiator 4 is singing," Suri said. "It wants to be a kettle. I recommend we stop making tea." "Noted," I said, grinning despite myself. "We'll give it a cold tap soon. Be grave. Let the joke belong to survivors." "Ultimatum at 02:00, Park said. "They are repeating now. Words getting smaller." "They're scared," Ortega said. "People repeat themselves when they want time to pause." "They want us to blink," I said. "We don't blink. We look." Quorum's voice soft. "Admiral, the net is moving. Local Vorlith support accounts are quiet. A Fleet Auxiliaries union handle has just asked for the shift pay owed to Black Tally's crew. Someone is counting where we can't see. Count their debts until they can't bear the weight." "Black Tally," I said on open channel, "your crew knows the math. Stand down your interdiction and we pass. You can call it discipline. We will call it mercy. Everyone keeps a piece of pride." Silence. The ship's vibration leveled into a fat purr like a cat lying on a warm window. Heat shimmer bent a status light into a little mirage. Somewhere a child sang 2 notes of a song and forgot the rest and laughed. The timer slid under 01:30. Killshard spoke. "We will escort you," it said. "Inspection deferred pending review." The word review sounded like it had to fight to be said. On my pad, Black Tally's interdiction field relaxed by a percentage that would never show on a recruitment video, but would be obvious to anyone who had held a wrench in this business. Open without bowing, pass without crawling. We moved again, careful as surgeons. The corridor no longer felt like a collar. It felt like a throat someone had decided not to close. The convoy's wakes widened. Ortega's fingers slowed. He blinked sweat into his eyelashes and laughed once under his breath. Park's shoulders dropped a centimeter. Quorum hummed a line of an old hymn without words. First objective achieved, Quorum said. Blockade broken by public accounting. We have a tail, but the hammer is sheathed. Costs, I asked, because the question is part of the job. It keeps your soul from floating out of your body and getting lost in the starfield. Radiators 3 and 4 need love, Suri said. 2 techs singed a third mad because I won't let her bend near a hot manifold. We owe a letter to a belt co-op about those buoys. We spent more coolant than Doctrine likes, and the pumps will hear about it later in their aching little hearts. Pay the price. Write it down. Walk away. We cleared the ring. The reach opened into honest dark. The convoy slid into the reasonable chaos of space where nothing wants to kill you but vacuum and entropy. The Vorlith pair paced us like wolves who had decided to learn another trade but couldn't stop watching sheep. I exhaled, felt my breath bounce warm and human off the inside of my collar, and let my mind fill the next board. Now, for the second set piece, Park said, reading me. We will have to spring the corridor trap on our terms before they write the story for us when we dock. We don't spring it, I said. We unfold it. Their doctrine is a door with a one-way handle. We'll show the handle's other face. Quorum pulled up the system map. The open corridor Vorlith claimed as their humane channel ran through the Zephyr array, a thin line of beacons utterly undermatched for the traffic Vorlith pushed when it wanted to look clean. Zephyr has a public camera net, Ortega said. Union run, transparent. If we seed mirror nodes there, we can turn their open corridor into a lens that makes their hands look like hands, not gloves. Do it quiet, I said. We don't need drama. We need light. Open the book. Let them see who wrote the margins. The ship cooled by a degree, and the smell shifted from hot coin to the faint, comforting reek of old socks and broth the kids had not finished. The deck thrum dipped and steadied. I rolled my shoulders and the joints popped, a small thunder trapped under skin. Park's eyes were bright the way eyes get when a plan feels like a bridge you can walk without looking down. Mid-story note to self, Quorum said, voice as dry as a page. This fleet teaches by numbers and remembers by ledgers, never by collars. Good, I said. Remember it when we're tired. I rubbed the spot under my collar where the metal had pressed earlier. The skin there was warm and a little pink. My bones felt heavy and useful. Steady your hands, brighten the room. We approached Zephyr. The beacons winked like dim punctuation marks in a sentence someone had written in a hurry. The Union net was chatty. Dock bosses' argument flirted with tug crews. A kid posted a video of a comet tail and 10,000 people pretended they hadn't seen a comet tail before. Ortega's mirror nodes rode in on the backscatter of that joy. Vorlith Traffic Control wants to hold us on the edge, Park said. They're citing congestion. Their hands are too visible to say inspection yet. That's our cue, I said. Quorum thread the public feed through our mirror nodes. If Vorlith uses the corridor like a leash, we let the room see the fingers on the leash. We will have to stand very still to make the image stable, Quorum said. Stillness will read as submission to some eyes. Let them misread, I said. We will be doing the teaching while we stand. Open eyes with stillness. Move only when it hurts them to watch. The ship quieted. You could hear the small things, the whisper slide of a crewman's boot, the precise hiss of a valve letting out a sigh it had been holding for 2 hours, the little tick of thermal flex in a panel that had given us its best today. Zephyr's beacons brightened. The mirror nodes made their mesh. The corridor drew itself out like ribbon. Black Talia's back, Park said. Not speaking. Watching. Let them watch, I said. Let everyone watch. On my visor, the corridor's math resolved into an image anyone could understand, a path too narrow for safety, too bright for humility. The neutral net went quiet again in that hungry way people go quiet when the end of the story approaches. Take their favorite word and give it a second meaning. The corridor drew breath and became a stage. Zephyr's Union cameras steadied like a jury leaning forward. The convoy held its line engines, whispering at a fixed note that made the deck hum through boot soles. Quorum dimmed non-essential panels so no glare would wash out the image. Black Tally waited in the wings, all angles and appetite. You cannot lean on a word that won't be weighed. Before we moved the geometry, we put a face on the stakes. The civilian vignette came from a tug's tiny mess, a mother cutting a protein bar into exact quarters so 3 children and 1 grandmother got a piece the same size. Her knife scraped plastic with a small, relentless sound. The youngest asked if the corridor was like a hallway at school. It's a path someone else made, the mother said. We're going to make sure it's safe enough for you to run down later. The tug shivered as a beacon blinked. The grandmother put her hand flat on the table to feel the vibration and smiled without teeth. Turn the hallway into a window and ask who's looking. Begin phase 1, I said. Ortega's mirror nodes anchored to Zephyr's beacons and returned the corridor's field lines to their source without distortion. On the neutral net, the picture sharpened. It showed a path whose safety margin was a fiction maintained by tired crews and careful lies. Quorum overlaid cost figures in a corner without commentary. Reaction mass burned for humanity optics. Overtime hours unpaid the number of maintenance deferments signed in the last 100 days. Black Tally's comms are quiet, Park said. Killshard is sending them legal language as if law can keep a picture from settling. Phase 2, I said. Paint the inside out. We eased left by 3 ship lengths. The corridor's field flexed. Our mirror nodes showed how the flex required Black Tally to raise power in a way that bled heat into its rails and fatigued its mounts. The Union feed loved that. Someone posted a loop of a temperature graph with the caption, "This is what tired metal looks like." The mirror that shows you also shows your shaking hand. Vorlith escalated. A courier skiff shot ahead and dumped a cluster of glittering spheres like confetti. On our scopes, they read as aid markers, the kind Vorlith claimed they used to shepherd civilians. Ortega's jaw tightened. Those are half-gram-shaped charges wrapped in good intentions, he said. If we nudge them, they blow and the camera gets a story. Quorum. I said redirect the feed through the tug's bow camera and our tail mirror. Give everyone both angles. The image split from the tug, the spheres looked like lanterns. From our mirror tail, their detonation cones overlaid the corridor like neat little funeral tents. Count their kindness only when the bill has a name. The corridor watched itself. Black Tally flinched. There is a kind of silence crews share when tricks get seen. We can defuse, Ortega said, if we burn a little more heat than I promised Suri. He didn't look down. He knew the pumps by voice now, the way an old sailor knows a hull by tempo. Burn it, I said. Suri. The engineer's voice came back with the sound of a wrench tapping rhythm on a rail. I'll sing the pumps a song and offer them cool later, she said. 2 techs in insulated gloves, 1 blister each if they move like saints. Move like saints, I echoed. The deck took on an extra thrum, a low animal purr that meant we were asking the ship for grace. The spheres dimmed, starved by our field. The Union feed cheered without words, just with the emojis of a dozen stations old enough to be reliable and young enough to be earnest. Steady the heat, let the lie cool first. Black Tally broke radio discipline. Human flagship. The captain said, voice level and fraying, "You are corrupting the corridor." Park cut her eyes at me. I spoke carefully. We are revealing it. If you want a corridor that doesn't bruise, build one. Our doctrine, he began and stopped. Doctrine sounds worst when it has to breathe. Phase 3, I said. Flip the box. Our mirror nodes kissed Zephyr's beacons with a math most people would call poetry if they weren't busy surviving. The corridor inverted not in force, no one jolted, but in meaning. From the Union cameras, you could see that any strike on us would propagate asymmetrically and hit Vorlith's own rescue corvette, the one parked for show behind Black Tally. The geometry was public. The choice was public. The cost was public. Let their doctrine write its own receipt in front of a crowd. The next civilian vignette slid in without permission because someone on the Union net refused to stop posting. A welder on Beacon 7 set her torch down, lifted her face mask, and blinked at the image as if someone had rearranged the stars. She whispered, "Oh, that's what we've been holding." Then she laughed, once helpless, because seeing the bones of a thing is a relief with grief behind it. Her glove squeaked on her mask's hinge. "Killshard is speaking," Park said. "To Black Tally, not us." Quorum picked it up. "They are using the word optics like a prayer," Quorum said. "They are referencing a review board with Union observers." "Good," I said. "Hand them the door." Ortega placed our hull precisely between a camera and a weapon, making any strike also a confession. Quorum posted in neutral font a sentence firing, "Now will cost you a ship, you will be forced to pretend you did not lose. Brace your lesson in a place where spin cannot reach." Black Tally's captain came back. "We will hold the corridor," he said. "You will proceed at 1/3 thrust." His voice had changed key. It had found the octave where survival and pride can share a bar. "Proceed," I said. 1/3. The deck sighed. My collar cooled enough that the metal felt like a lake at night. Park rolled her shoulders and a knot in my own back unspooled in sympathy. "Costs rolling," Suri said. "One pump complaining more than it has a right. I'm bribing it with attention." "Mirror node losses are tolerable. Ortega, you owe me a crate of donuts and a fan letter to the co-op." "I'll write too," he said. He sounded wrecked and pleased. "Pay back every favor with a note and a promise." We cleared Zephyr under escort that was not quite an escort. The Union feed reassembled itself into work. Tugs shuffled. Dock bosses resumed swearing with love. Vorlith did not close the door behind us. It left it ajar to look like generosity. Quorum archived every frame. Frames are how policy changes when speeches won't. "Third escalation inbound," Park said. "Vorlith has issued a sector-wide broadcast. They're calling us lawless. They're proposing a summit on ultimatum integrity. They're building a new box," I said. "We'll meet them there and turn the lid transparent." Quorum plotted vectors. The summit would be in the shadow of Kestrel Forge, a manufacturing yard big enough to be its own weather. The Forge's unions were famously stubborn, famously poor, and famously in love with fair. "Before we walk into their lights," I said, "vignette me a reason." The feed opened on a crew bay. A pilot sat with his helmet in his lap, thumb tracing the seam where visor met shell. Across from him, a woman in coveralls tried to rub a stain out of her sleeve with a little square of solvent cloth. "If it stays," she said, "I'll call it a badge." The pilot smiled small. "You like badges?" She looked at him over the cloth. "I like work I can point at and say it helped a child breathe." The bay's fans made a soft, steady rush. You could almost smell the faint rubber note of the helmet liner through the camera. "Hold the quiet moment until the next loud one deserves you." Kestrel Forge loomed like an unfinished cathedral held together by habit and stubborn weld. The summit's hall was a cargo blister with a painted stripe and borrowed lights. Vorlith's delegation stood crisp and uncreased. Our delegation was me, Park Ortega, in clean coveralls he had no business wearing, and Quorum braided into my ear. Union observers filled the back like a weather front. Black Tally's captain stood off to one side, eyes hooded. He wore fatigue you couldn't iron. Admiral Vance the Vorlith speaker said, smiling like a cut. "We appreciate your attendance under truce. You endangered a corridor. We propose a ledger of penalties." "We propose a ledger of costs," I said. "Start with yours." There was a small sound in the back like a toolbox, shifting the Union breathing at the word ledger, the way sailors breathe at land. No balance sheet survives first contact with the truth. Quorum projected nothing. We had promised not to theater. Instead, the Union board projected the raw Zephyr feed and a single line of math that wasn't ours. It was Kestrel's what it would cost to bring the damaged buoys back to life, what Vorlith had deferred in maintenance to keep the corridor pretty. How many children could be kept on bottled oxygen with the same funds? The numbers sat like stones. The Vorlith speaker tried doctrine. "Ultimatums keep order," she said. "Without deadlines, chaos eats the weak." "Your deadlines eat the weak for you," Park said evenly. It wasn't a quip. It was an inventory line. The Union board nodded like a tide. Black Tally's captain's mouth tightened and then loosened in a motion I recognized a man choosing to let go of an argument he'd kept like a pet. "Propose your precedent," a Union chair said. "Public cost protocols," I said. "Any ultimatum must publish its full projected costs, fuel hours, maintenance, medical before it starts counting. Any corridor claiming humanity must be wide enough to permit it without spectacle. Inspection cannot be a leash or a ransom auction. Violate it, lose corridor privileges system-wide for a year. Open the rulebook. Write the new page with the hands that bleed." "Enforcement," the Vorlith speaker asked, as if she expected us to shrug. "The ledger," I said. "The board, the cameras, the unions, and us." I did not raise my voice. Quorum did not sweeten it. Ortega did not smile. Park did not blink. The room's recycled air made a low hiss through vents that needed cleaning, and I loved that sound for how alive it was. "Black Tally," the chair asked. "My crew is owed days off and a pay ledger that doesn't lie," he said. "I can sell mercy if it's written down." He met my eyes for a fraction and looked away, which is how a man says, "I am not your friend, but I am not your enemy anymore either." "Count mercy like money. Spend it only where it grows." Vorlith haggled. They said operational flexibility with a straight face. They tried threat environment. The board answered with maintenance logs and graveyard rates, and the number of times a corridor had been used as theater. The sound of the room was boots on metal chairs, creaking the low cough of someone who worked around dust too long. Kestrel's gravity tugged on all of us. We swayed together and called it debate. We got it. Not perfect. Never perfect, but enough to make doctrine bleed. The board wrote the public cost protocols in language even tired men could read at 3 a.m. Vorlith signed because not signing would have cost more face than they could afford to pay. Quorum recorded the moment and filed it where history could find it without a searchlight. The precedent lock clicked. In 2 lines and a seal, corridors became places where numbers had to walk before orders did. The first rule that saves a child is worth 10 that save a flag. It should have ended clean. It didn't. Doctrine hates a bruise. A Vorlith hardliner on a support corvette decided to reclaim awe with a timed detonation package hidden in a decommissioned beacon near the forge set to blow and blame a Union sabotage cell unless we returned for inspection under integrity protocols. The package read like an old note left under a new rock. Quorum found it because we had taught it to smell malice in timing. The signature on the trigger was petty stolen power from a lighting loop, a voltage dip that pushed a fan into a different wine. There, Quorum said, as soft as a whisper through hair, "We have 8 minutes." We didn't argue. The ship did not need speeches. Ortega and Suri ran their boots ringing like bells on the boarding spine. Park took the con and put Palisade into a posture that blocked the corvette's clean path to the beacon. I laced my collar and tasted that rubbery tang of suit seals waking. Do not let their last trick be the last lesson. The civilian vignette was the forge's own two apprentices looking up as the lights flickered and a noise like a cough went through the ribs of the station. Is that us? One asked. The other shook her head slow. That's someone trying to make a story. They took each other's hands. The camera caught calluses and ink and a promise you don't say out loud. We latched to the dead beacon hard enough to make the hull clack. The air smelled like old dust and coolant ghosts. Ortega's breath rasped in my ear. Suri's voice was precise and fond at once. You ridiculous antique, she told the beacon. You are not going to die dramatic. The package winked in and out of our scopes as if shame made it shy. It was wired like a lie told in a hurry, plausible from across a room, obvious with a hand on it. 5 minutes, Park said. The deck thrummed a little higher. Heat shimmered across a bulkhead and made Quorum's status lights look like they wavered. I tasted copper under my tongue. Adrenaline makes all metal taste like home. Cut here, Ortega said. Brace for a small scold. He lifted a panel. Stale air burped. A fan made a noise like a sigh. Suri's gloved fingers found the lead and pinched. 3-2, yes, she said as calm as tea. Anchor your nerves in the smallest true motion. We could have paraded. We didn't. Quorum took the disarmed package and placed it on the Union table with the grace we had saved for children and machines. The hardliner tried one last speech. Doctrine writes speeches faster than regret writes silence. The Union chair tapped the casing twice with a knuckle that had known wrench handles and smoked steel, then slid it back across like a bill. Public cost protocols, the chair said, apply to stunts. The hardliner's eyes flickered toward Black Tally, seeking old fraternity. He didn't find it. The captain kept his gaze on a spot halfway between pride and duty and did not move. The forge exhaled. The air smelled like ozone and soup. Boots scuffed. Someone laughed too hard and then covered their mouth, embarrassed and forgiven. We escorted the convoy in. Kestrel's docking arms came out like hands from a family that fights and still holds. The med barges docked, and you could feel the station's breath change. Even metal lifts its shoulders when it knows it will get new filters. In the cargo blister, the mother from the tug let the last quarter of the protein bar be a celebration instead of a ration. Open the doors. Let the room tell you if you did right. Aftermath came not with trumpets, but with forms that mattered. Vorlith rescinded corridor privileges in 2 adjacent systems pending compliance with public cost protocols. The board posted auditors with cameras and boots. Unions updated their shift ledgers to include cost notes for every humanitarian optic. The doctrine did not die. It learned to speak softer and pay receipts in daylight. That is what victory looks like when you refuse to make graves teach your classes. Costs moved with us. Suri wrapped 2 burned wrists in clean film and scolded the techs for trying to lift things they had no business lifting. Ortega slept on the deck beside his console with a coil of fiber as a pillow. Park wrote 3 letters to families of crew who had earned nothing more dramatic than a scar and the right to tell a joke. I stood at a viewport and watched the mirror lattice drift down from radiator cool to a pewter gray, a sky of tiny decommissioned stars. In the quiet, Quorum spoke with the voice it used when the room did not need a teacher. Admiral, it said, I have revised my model of mercy. How? I asked. The glass was cold under my palm. My breath fogged and cleared, fogged and cleared. It is not the absence of teeth, Quorum said. It is the choice to bite last and make the bite a boundary, not a hunger. Keep that, I said. We'll need it. My throat tasted like sleep and old coffee. The deck's hum was an animal purr that promised waking work and blessed rest. In the last circuit before we cut the lights low, I walked the ship. I felt the panel's warmth with my fingertips. I listened to the pumps mutter the vents, breathe the occasional ping of metal contracting like distant rain. I passed a kid asleep under a blanket, printed with stars, too bright to be honest. His chest rose and fell with a rhythm that dared the universe to count it. Park nodded to me from a shadow, where she sat with a mug gone cold. Ortega snored. Suri sang a terrible song to a pump that refused to learn manners. Black Tally's icon sat at the edge of my scope like a man on a porch who has decided to watch a while instead of pick a fight. I keyed the ship wide and spoke not the voice for battle, but the one for long hauls. We taught by numbers today, I said, and we remembered by a ledger that will not be a caller. We took heat when heat was the price of a softer lantigu for someone else. We refused to let an ultimatum pretend to be a god. Our doctrine is simple: we show the cost, we share the cost, and we leave a door even for the hand that tried to close the room. The blockade lights at Zephyr dimmed to station night. A public tally clicked over from pending to settled on the union board. The mirror arrays cooled to pewter and fell into gentle spin, each facet catching a different kind of dawn. We will not be measured by how fast we answered a clock, but by how carefully we taught a room full of hands to count the right things. Mercy will be our geometry. Cost will be our grammar. We will anchor our pride where children breathe, and our wrath where doctrine writes calendars on other people's skin. If they bring another corridor, we will weigh it. If they bring another timer, we will learn it and unmake its hunger. The day they tried to teach us fear, we taught them to count.